So namaste and greetings everyone. A very wonderful Thursday morning in this part of the world, in our beloved India, in Pondicherry, the land of the Siddhas. And I take this opportunity to welcome all our participants, our distinguished resource people who will be joining today and for the next sessions up to the 27th of April.
Hello. Sir?
Vanakkam, yes, Hema. Yeah, yes. Can we switch on the video for sir, please?
Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
We are only hearing from sir, but we are not seeing sir's video.
Once again, sir. Can you, sir?
Yes. Now it's fine.
So audible, sir?
Yes, you can tilt the camera slightly down.
Once again, sir. I'll just. All right, sir?
Yes.
Once again, sir.
Namaste, Vanakkam, Swagatam. Welcome everyone to this wonderful morning, a Thursday morning, where we are starting today's event, an event that is a very special event on salutogenesis and holistic health. A webinar series that is starting today and going till April 27th. I take this opportunity to welcome our most respected Vice Chancellor of SBV, Professor NR Biswas ji. This is his first event for us at ISCM, and it is so auspicious. It's on a Thursday, the Guruvar. It is a very auspicious day here in this part of the world, and we are looking forward to a decade of salutogenesis under your guidance, sir. So welcoming, sir, for this event. We would like to welcome Dr. Avishai Antonovsky, the illustrious son and successor of the father of salutogenesis, Dr. Aaron Antonovsky himself, who's joining us all the way from Israel. We welcome you, Dr. Avishai, to this special event and would like to appreciate your presence and support. We now begin with the invocation in our traditional manner. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirviknam Guru Me Deva Sarvakareshu Sarvada. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So welcoming everyone to this very special day, a day where we are beginning an international webinar series on salutogenesis and holistic health. SBV has been in the forefront of supporting salutogenesis, and we wish to place on record our deep gratitude to our Chancellor, Sir, Sri M.K. Rajagopalan, Sir, for his unstinting support to the efforts of salutogenesis over the past decade and a half in the form of yoga therapy and music therapy. We wish to place on record our appreciation and gratitude to Professor Seduraman, sir, who gave us the seed of salutogenesis, Professor S.C. Parija, sir, who sustained the momentum, and now our present Vice Chancellor, sir, the most honorable Professor NR Biswas, sir, who right from the beginning has been enthusiastically encouraging us to take this message and make it an international message. We welcome our respected Vice Chancellor, sir, to this event. Namaskar, sir. We welcome Dr. Avishai Antonovsky, the son and successor, a very eminent personality in his own way, as I will be discussing in a few moments, who is our salutogenic mentor. I consider him our salutogenic mentor and dear friend who has enabled us to reach those parts of the world we had not reached earlier. And we hope that as we move into this international territory, your support and guidance will be with us, Dr. Avishai. I wish to request our Vice Chancellor, sir, to at this time deliver the inaugural address. But before that, I would like to express our deep appreciation and gratitude to Professor Aaron Antonovsky, the father of salutogenesis. He was born in 1923, and hence we are at SBV celebrating this year as the year of salutogenesis and his centenarial year that is going to be going for the next year or so. This is such an auspicious occurrence that the ISCM was formed in 2022 on August 22. So 22/8/22, it's a palindrome of date. And recently we had also inaugurated a special plaque in honor of Antonovsky himself, and Dr. Avishai was our honored guest on that occasion. This gave the rise to having this Salutogenesis and Holistic Health, an international webinar series organized by the Institute of Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine of SBB. And we are collaborating with the Indian Yoga Association that brings together all the eminent schools of yoga in India under one umbrella. We are beginning today on the 9th of March and will be going till the 27th of April. With this short overview, I would like to now introduce our respected Vice Chancellor, sir, Professor Niharanjan Biswas ji, our current Vice Chancellor of Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth, a deemed to be university accredited by NAC with A++. Sir is the former Director and Vice Chancellor, Indira Gandhi Institute of Medical Sciences, Patna in Bihar. He has also been former Director, Mahavir Vatsalya Hospital and Mahavir Heart Hospital in Patna. He has been an advisor to Government of India, BP Koirala Institute of Health Sciences in Nepal, and also Honorary Professor of Clinical Pharmacology in the same institute in Nepal. He has been a visiting faculty, College of Medicine, King Faisal University in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He has been a core member of the Delhi Society for Promotion of Rational Use of Drugs, the India WHO Program in Essential Drugs, National Pharmacovigilance Center, WHO Collaborating Center for International Drug Monitoring with Sweden, Future Group International as a resource person on preparing medicine policy. He has developed so many indigenous technologies and made a mark not only on the national but international scene. It is our deep honor, sir, on this occasion to request you to deliver the inaugural address for the International Webinar Series of Salutogenesis and Holistic Health. Namaskar, sir.
Namaskaram. Nice invocation and introduction by Professor Anandaji Bhavnani. And it's heartening to know that the great son, Aaron Antonovsky, was born in 1923, and now we are celebrating centenary year of salutogenesis. On behalf of our chairman, sir, Sri M. K. Rajagopalan, and on my own behalf, I am pleased to give the inaugural address for the International Webinar Series on Salutogenesis and Holistic Health, being organized from 9th March to 27th April 2023 by the Institute of Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine. In short, we call it ISCM of Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth, and in short, we call it SBV. SBV is one of India's top ranking healthcare universities with more than 3,000 students enrolled in the streams of medicine, dentistry, nursing, pharmacy, and allied health sciences. Its salutogenic orientation towards wellness, well-being, and programs towards this goal have received wide acclaim. And health is not only promotion, the prevention of disease, it is physical, mental, or spiritual well-being. Now, social, emotional, intellectual, vocational, and environmental dimensions are added in the definition of this holistic health. We at SBV have high regard for the father of salutogenesis, as I pointed, Professor R. Antonovsky, and for his magnificent creation, the theory of salutogenesis, the focus on factors enhancing wellness and health promotion. My respect to this departed soul. This has been a source of inspiration for us in integrating health promotion and wellness through yoga therapy and music therapy into the modern medical system for over a decade and a half. Since the inception, yoga therapy and music therapy have been part of SBV, and through these two modalities, we have focused on manifesting salutogenesis through traditional and indigenous systems of therapy. Dedicated centers for the same in the form of Center for Yoga Therapy Education and Research and Center for Music Therapy Education and Research have enabled more than 10 million care seekers to manifest wellness while taking the message salutogenesis to all students who pass through SBV. On the 22nd of August last year, these two centers were amalgamated, and the ISCM, Institute of Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine, thus heralding a new era of wellness-focused medicine in our country. And this ISCM is unique in that it is the only salutogenesis-focused institute in the whole country. And I requested Professor Anandaji that this should be the Nedal Center, and from here, all other medical colleges, the professors and doctors will come here and get training, and it will spread throughout the country of India and abroad. Salutogenesis now is not a familiar word in this part of India and world, and yet through the effort of our team at SBB, thousands have got to know of this valuable concept of life indeed. In fact, every time any of us present anywhere, we discuss about salutogenesis, and by this way, people are learning. In fact, it is the science of health. It's not like pathology, which is the science of disease. Precisely, it is like any other science. And so the study of health and focus on factors that support human health and well-being. It's not like pathogenesis, which is the science of disease. And today is a special day, a momentous occasion when we are beginning the first international webinar being organized by the ISCM and is having eminent faculty from all over the world addressing this important topic for the benefit of humanity. I am pleased to note that Dr. Avishai Antonovsky, the illustrious son of Professor R. Antonovsky, is delivering the first talk in this series. Welcome, Professor Avishai Antonovsky, and Dr. Avishai Antonovsky is phenomenal, and we acknowledge with gratitude his support in spreading the message of holistic health and wellness worldwide. It gives me great pleasure that he will be addressing the important topic today at ISCM, considers him their mentor in the field of salutogenesis. And it is heartening to note that Indian government is also changing the name of primary health center, primary sub-center, instead of health center, the well-being centers. I am also happy that eminent speakers from around the globe will be enlightening us with their wisdom, including Professor Bengt Lindström, Professor Emeritus at Nordic School of Public Health, Norway, Professor George F. Boyer, University of Zurich, Switzerland, and Professor Margaret Daniel, University of Bergen, Norway. I incidentally visited all these Switzerland and Norway long back, nearly 1/4 century ago in 1997. Professor Ingun Hagen, Norwegian University of Science and Technology, Norway. Yugacharya Sridharan, Senior Mentor, KIM Chennai. Dr. Srinidhi K. Sarathy, Principal, Indian Academy Degree College, former Registrar, and in Bangalore, and Professor A.R. Srinivasan, our Registrar. Of course, I must congratulate the ISCM team, and they are the bench backbone and the bench worker, and the team leader is Professor Balaji Vidyapeeth and his colleagues from the School of Yoga Therapy and Music Therapy for their efforts and contribution in this historic event. I must congratulate their continuous effort in spreading the message of holistic medicine and salutogenesis. I wish the event all success and hope that all the participants from around the world would benefit from this international webinar series and take the message to their own countries, their own institution, and their own people. Thank you again very much for your patience, hearing, and spreading this message throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your beautiful inaugural address that has touched upon the key points about SBV and the attempt by us at the ISCM with the patronage of your kind self, our own registrar, sir, who is with us today, Srinivasan, sir, Dr. Avishai, who is definitely our mentor and well-wisher. I would like to say that thanks to the efforts of Dr. Avishai, the STARS, the Society for the Promotion of Research in the Theory of Salutogenesis in the University of Zurich, they are also supporting us. In fact, this morning it was heartening to see them tweet, retweet about this event. And in the latest newsletter also they have highlighted. So we really feel that with your blessing, sir, ISCM will put the SBV on the salutogenic map of the world. And we hope that we will be a window onto this part of the world for STARS and the global working group of salutogenesis. So we wish to thank you, sir, on this occasion for taking time out of your busy schedule and enlightening us with your words, sir. Namaste, Dhanyavad, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, please continue. I have all the support for your effort, and I have to visit second campus, Satyashai. So please
Yes.
continue and excuse me for this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Dhanyavad, sir. I now take this opportunity to introduce our dear mentor, our dear friend, supporter, Dr. Avishai. And a couple of months back, I'll tell you the story before I officially introduce him, but a couple of months back, out of the blue, we had an email from Dr. Avishai. And I remember at that time, Dr. A.K. sir, our Dean of Faculty, was in the USA, and he sent me in the middle of the night an email saying, what is this Institute of Salutogenesis? And for me, it was a very special moment, a bit frightening initially, like, oh my God, we have just started the institute and there's this question. But then when I saw it was Dr. Avishai, I'm like, this is a godsend, because the love we have for Professor Avishai Antonovsky, the first professor of salutogenesis and the father of that beautiful concept. We have so much love for him. We have heard so much about him. We have studied about him. And yes, now I got an email from his son. I think, there was a very beautiful feeling that came with that repetition. And then we started communicating, and I have really, really enjoyed our communication, which is so efficient, so clear, so empathetic. And with his blessings, we were able to, in December, inaugurate and open a plaque of his illustrious father on his father's birthday. And a statement was released by SBB that we'll be celebrating this as the year of salutogenesis, and of course, the centenarial year of the father of salutogenesis. Since then, Dr. Avishai has supported us. And when I broached the topic of this webinar, he was immediately, I must say, he said, wonderful. I will put you in touch with people who can be resource persons for this. And with his guidance, we have lined up very eminent speakers. We have speakers who succeeded Professor Antonovsky in his work of salutogenesis, Dr. Bent. We have Dr. Georg, who's spearheading the Center for Salutogenesis in the University of Zurich and the Global Working Group, STARS. So, we have this, it feels like a parampara. In India, we give great importance to the traditional lineage. So it feels like we have become part of the lineage of salutogenesis, which is not just a theoretical concept, but a living science for us. So with these words, I'm going to give the official introduction for a few minutes. Just give me a moment while I make sure that you can see my slides. I hope you can see my slides. Yeah. Is the Balaji, is it coming up? Slides are coming now?
Yes, sir. It's coming, sir.
Fine, thank you. So it gives me great pleasure to officially introduce Dr. Avishai Antonovsky to all our participants. We have 138 registered, of which I think at least 60 plus are currently joining us online. The others will be looking at the recordings because of the time zone differences across the world. We have about 15 countries registered, people from 15 countries, which is beautiful to have that. Dr. Avishai is the head of the research unit, Mental Fitness Branch, Department of Health and Wellbeing, the Medical Corps, the Israel Defense Forces in Israel. He is the illustrious son of Professor Aaron Antonovsky and an experienced researcher working in higher education. He is an amazing lecturer, as you are going to hear in a few moments. His work in social psychology, medical education, mental health promotion, of course, salutogenesis, student counseling, and scientific editing. He has a Doctor of Philosophy in Social Psychology, as well as a Bachelor in Musicology from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. But more than all of these official aspects, we at ISCM consider him a dear mentor and friend. So with that brief introduction to Dr. Avishai, I'm going to give over to you for your presentation. I have made you a co-host so that you can share your presentation easily.
Okay. Thank you very much. Namaste, everyone. I am very glad and honored to be here. And thank you for your very kind words, Professor Anandaji. I think I wouldn't be here without the support of the Institute for Salutogenesis in Zurich, led, as you said, by Professor Georg Bauer. Belonging to that institute enabled me to advance my own salutogenic studies, and it is through them actually that I came to know of the ISCM. We first met by email in October, I think it was, and as you described, the rest is history. I will try to share my screen now, and hopefully it will be okay. Can you see this? Okay, thank you. So today I'm going to give an introductory talk about salutogenesis. This is a word or a term that most of you have heard. Some of you know it well, and perhaps for them it will be sort of describing salutogenesis from a different angle. And for others of you, the term, you heard the term, but it is still new. So this will be sort of an introductory to salutogenesis and other relevant concepts. I will talk about salutogenesis and ease, disease, and the river in between. As Professor Anandaji said, I'm a social psychologist. I work mainly in recent years in mental health promotion research. And I'm also a musician and a photographer in the little spare time that I have. I would like to take you all back to the 1970s. In the 1970s, medicine was taught and thought according to the biomedical pathogenic model. What is the biomedical pathogenic model? In short, it says there is a pathogen. A pathogen is something that causes disease, and disease in the most general way. Disease can be a heart failure. It can be, God forbid, cancer. It can be a broken leg. It can be depression. It can be COVID-19. Whatever specific disease a pathogen causes. And then there is a cure or there is no cure. That's in a question mark. Some diseases have a cure, some do not. In a more figurative manner, think of a river of disease. Imagine yourself walking along a river. The sun is shining, the flowers are blooming, the birds are singing, and suddenly you fall into the water. You fall into the water, that means you become sick with something. You are diagnosed with having a specific sickness. Once you fall into the water, curative medicine comes along. Doctors try to help you, focusing on the disease, asking what causes the disease and how to cure or treat the disease. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they do not. A few years later came along the movement of preventive medicine. Preventive medicine means if you're walking outside along the river, they try to help you not to fall into the river. But preventive medicine focuses on disease as well. It says, if you don't want cancer, don't smoke. If you don't want diabetes, don't eat too much sweet food, and so on and so forth. Both curative medicine and preventive medicine focus on disease. Now, at the same time, in the early 70s, in a small office, in a small town in Israel, sat Professor Aaron Antonovsky. Professor Aaron Antonovsky was a sociologist who did work in the field of health and medical sociology. And as Professor Anandaji mentioned, Aaron Antonovsky was my late father. I, at the time, was a young teenager. I didn't care too much about my father's work. He worked at the Ben Gurion University of the Negev, which is a part of southern Israel. And he was one of the founders of the medical school in Ben Gurion University. I knew he was working at the Faculty of Health Sciences. I knew he was doing research. I knew he was a professor. But, you know, as teenagers, I wasn't very interested. As it turned out to me years later, he was engaged then in what became a groundbreaking study on the adjustment of women to menopause. His study had several hundred, actually over 1,000 women in his sample. And he asked questions about how women in their 50s adjust to menopause. That means these women were born in the 20s or the late 1910s or the early 1920s. And in his study, there were two specific subsamples. One sample was women who were born in Germany around 1920 and came to Israel, or what would be later on the State of Israel. State of Israel was established in 1948. So these are women who arrived in Israel in the mid-30s when they were teenagers or in their early 20s. before World War II. Another subsample of women were women born in Germany, the same place, the same time, but they came to Israel after World War II and had gone through World War II in concentration camps. In Nazi concentration camps, which is probably the most difficult experience one can think of. And a question was asked in this study about how is life? And these are the general results. Out of women who were not in Nazi concentration camps during World War II, 51% reported good adjustment. Good adjustment means we have a family, we have a job, we have friends, we go on trips. Life is okay, life is good. Among the women who were in Nazi concentration camps during the war, only 29% reported good adjustment. Now, this difference between 51% and 29% is large. You know, there was a famous statistician who said, if you need statistics to see if you have found anything, then you have not found anything. So anyway, these results are expected, not to say trivial. I mean, what's so special in these results? It's quite obvious that women who did not go through the war would be in much better condition than women who suffered the most excruciating, terrible, horrible experience one can think of. So my father tells that he was looking at these data, and he said, well, there's nothing exciting about this. And then suddenly he said to himself, I'm an idiot. I'm not looking at the right place. Instead of looking at the difference between these two groups, I should look only at this piece of data. Out of women who are in the concentration camps, it's not one or two or three women who said they're doing well. It is almost a third of those hundreds of women in that subsample that said life is good. We sometimes have dreams, we sometimes have painful memories, but in general, life is okay. 30 years after the war, they came to Israel as immigrants to a new country, very different from their country of origin. They went through 3 wars that occurred in Israel since its establishment until the 1970s. How can this be explained? How can women who went through all this still report good adjustment? What were their powers? What were their resources? What were their strengths? What enabled them to cope? Nobody in the medical establishment has ever asked this question, because the medical Western world was occupied by the question, what is the origin of disease? And accordingly, there was there still is a very widely used term, pathogenesis. Pathogenesis literally means the origin of disease. Genesis is origin or beginning, and patho, disease. And my father asked the question of what is the origin of health? But this question had no term in the scientific literature. So if what is the origin of disease is pathogenesis, what word should be used for the origin of health? So my father thought and thought and thought and couldn't come up with an idea. So he did what he usually does or would do in this situation, ask my mother. But my mother thought and thought and thought and couldn't come up with a word either. And then one day my father said, I got it. If the origin of disease is pathogenesis, the origin of health would be salutogenesis. Genesis, beginning or origin, and salute in Latin means health. So salutogenesis would be the term applied to the question of what is the origin of health. Now, it seems as though pathogenesis and salutogenesis may be the two sides of the same coin, but they are not. Now, I can ask you, but if I were present physically with you, I would ask you to raise your hands. I know it's possible on Zoom too, but I don't see many of you now because you're on the side of my screen. But if I would ask who was sick during the last 12 months, I assume some of you would raise your hands. And okay, and further, if I ask what was your sickness, what were you diagnosed with, you could answer. Maybe you had the flu, maybe you had COVID-19, maybe you broke an arm, maybe you were in a short period of depression, whatever. You know what you were sick with. Now I will ask another question. Who was healthy during the last 12 months? Well, probably most of you would raise your hands, including those who raised your hands before. And further, I see you raised your hand, Professor Anande, so I will ask you, what was your health? What health were you diagnosed with? Now, this is difficult to answer. Okay. You can tell me what kind of sickness you had, what you would, because you were diagnosed according to specific medical criteria, like blood test or something else. But if I asked you, what was your health? It's very difficult to answer this question because you were never diagnosed with a specific health. Healthy means something more holistic. Pathogenesis is diagnostic. Either you're sick or you're not with a specific disease. Criteria may change over the years, but at a specific point in time, you're diagnosed as sick or not. Salutogenesis is holistic, and it assumes a continuum between ease and disease. We are always, each and every one of us, always on some place, on some point on that continuum. And if I go back to the river, the salutogenic model of health assumes we are not walking outside along the river and sometimes fall in. We're always in the river. We have to keep swimming all the time because there is always something to deal with. We are never perfectly healthy. There's also always something to deal with. And the question is, how do most people get along and don't drown? How can the river of disease become the river of life? In other words, what helps us stay healthy despite germs, quarrels, politics, divorce, bad weather, overdraft in the bank, COVID-19, death of a loved one, and all other stressors that the world has to offer us? What helps us stay despite all the stressors we encounter on a daily basis? Well, Aaron Antonovsky's gift to the world was the answer to this salutogenic question. And the answer he came up with was the sense of coherence. Now, if my father came up with the term salutogenesis, it was my mother who thought of the term sense of coherence, or in short, SOC. What is sense of coherence? Again, many of you know about the sense of coherence, but for those who don't, I will go deeply into it. And for those who do know it, I will present it from a different angle. Sense of coherence is not a state, a specific state we are in at a certain time. It is also not a trait. It's not something we're born with. It is an orientation towards life that we develop usually during the first 3 decades of our life. Having a strong sense of coherence means seeing the challenges in our world as understandable and predictable, as controllable by resistance resources, and as meaningful and motivating, thus enabling one to cope with the world's demands. These 3 things are actually the 3 interrelated components of the sense of coherence. The first component is comprehensibility, to understand and to be able to predict. What does that mean? Comprehensibility, first of all, needs information. To understand something, we need information. But information is not enough. This information should reduce uncertainty and should also make sense and enable us to predict what will happen next. As I said, information is not enough. Here's an example. Look at this slide. And now look at this slide. It's the same slide. It says the same thing. I gave you the same information. Does this make sense? Does this reduce uncertainty? For 99.5% of you, at least, probably not, because you do not read Hebrew. This and this are the same slide. This one makes sense because we understand the language, and this does not. Almost as bad as doctors, physicians' handwriting. And excuse me, all the physicians who are sitting here. Thank God we're moving to tablets today. So in order for us to understand, to comprehend, we need the information to make sense and to reduce uncertainty. The second component of sense of coherence is manageability, to perceive the resources as available. And what does this mean? It's not enough to have all kinds of resources around us. They have to be relevant to the challenges we're trying to overcome. And we have to have the feeling that we control these resources, and they should not overhelp or underhelp or overload or underload. Because if a resource is available and it's too easy to use, we will not strengthen our sense of coherence. It will be too easy for us. On the other hand, if it is too difficult, it won't help us. It will frustrate us. An example I can give of this is that one day during COVID-19, I got a Zoom call from my grandson. And he was holding this piece of paper, and it says in Hebrew, "Grandfather, help me." So I said, "Okay, what kind of help do you need?" He said, "I have homework in math." So I said, well, how can I help you? He said, "Please do my homework instead of me." Well, I said, look, I went to school several years ago and I did my homework. So this time it's your turn. And he said, well, maybe. So anyway, do my homework. So I said, look, I'm not going to do your homework for you, but let's try out this. Let's go over the problems you need to solve in math. We'll figure out what we need. We'll do one or two exercises together. And from there on, you will take it and do it on your own. How is that? Well, he tried to protest, but it didn't help. Finally, that's what we done. We read the math exercises. We did one or two together. He understood what was needed to be done, and he completed it on his own. Now, in terms of manageability, I was his resource. I was a relevant resource because I was someone who could help with homework in math, as long as it was 5th grade math, not more than that. I was a controllable resource in meaning that I was available. He could give me a call on the telephone or on Zoom, and I was available. And there was this overload-underload balance. I did not say, okay, I will do your homework for you. And I also did not say, I'm not interested, solve your problems on your own. So this is an example of manageability. And the third component is meaningfulness, to find meaning and motivation to cope with challenges. Now, this means having motivation, having the will, having the desire to cope. But without meaningfulness, both comprehensibility and manageability are not enough. Because if I understand what needs to be done and can predict what will come next, and if I feel that I have the relevant resources, it is not enough if I don't have the willpower, if I'm not motivated to cope with the challenges. And I think the best example of motivation and will and desire to cope is the story of a person by the name of Yoram Eshet Alkalai. Yoram Eshet Alkalai was an Israeli 22-year-old when the 1973 Yom Kippur War broke out between Israel and its neighbors. He was a student, first-year student of geology, and he was called to war, and he was very, very badly wounded. Years later, he published a book, and on the back cover of the book, this is what it says. On October 18th, 1973, Yoram Eshet Alkalai was lying on the ground in Egypt with a big hole in his head after being hit by a shell. A doctor who insisted to treat him was told, "Leave him, keep your medicines for those who can be saved." When he woke up in the hospital, his body and mind were wounded, his left side paralyzed, his eyes blind, and his consciousness confused. Professor Yoram Eshet Alkalai, today he's a full professor, was rehabilitated. He completed his BA degree, his bachelor degree in geology, and then graduate degree in geology and a doctorate in geology, and then turned to the field of educational technologies. He is today a full professor of education in one of the Israeli universities, the head of the graduate program of education. And I had the good luck to work with him. Our two offices were one next to each other, door by door. And we worked together for 12 years. And in one of my first meetings with him, I asked him, how did you do this? How did you overcome? Now, he is still, his left side is still paralyzed. If you take a close look at him, you cannot see in this picture, but on the other side of his head, there is a hole. A quarter of his brain is simply missing. And when I asked him, how did you do this? So he said, well, the first challenge was to understand what happened. Because, you know, when someone has his leg amputated or cut off, that is terrible. It's very painful, but he can understand what happened. I was hit in the head. The part of my brain that was in charge of cognitive processes was gone. So I couldn't understand what was happening to me. I needed to learn to talk. I needed to learn to read and to write. That was a long process, but finally I was able to understand what was happening and what could happen next. And then I asked myself, well, how do I do this? And I was lucky to have several good doctors and a supportive family and a good group of close friends and physiotherapists and a whole medical staff that could help me. I had what was needed to recover. But he added, the most difficult part was to decide that I wanted to do it. I would lie in bed at night and ask myself, what for? This is going to be so hard. This will take so much time. What for? But then I said to myself, well, life can be good. Life has a meaning. I want to live. I want to recover. And so he began this long process of rehabilitation and finally made it. So what he said actually was, I understand, I have the power, and I find meaning. And after that, I said to him, well, actually, what you're saying, Yoram, is that you had comprehensibility and manageability and meaningfulness. In other words, you had a strong sense of coherence. And he said, a sense of what? Because he had never heard of the sense of coherence. He never heard about salutogenesis, which was born about the same time that he was wounded in 1973. So I explained what salutogenesis was, And he agreed with me, if that's what salutogenesis is, or a sense of coherence that I have, then I have a strong sense of coherence. Which leads to the question, what builds a strong sense of coherence? The first thing, or the main thing, as a personal experiences during the first 3 decades, more or less, of life, experience of stability, knowing what will happen next. Because if things happen consecutively in the same way, so we can predict what will come after that. The load balance, like I described before, we need appropriate resources which are not too easy, not too difficult. And meaningfulness expressed by participation in activities in society, the feeling that I can contribute to society, meeting my own important personal values. This builds up meaningfulness. Another important factor in building a strong sense of coherence is social support, social status, education, money, all these are resources. Religious faith may be a strong resource, and perhaps genetics. This is with a question mark, because only in recent years, people, biologists mainly, started questioning the role of genetics in the sense of coherence. It's not a trait that we're born with, but the question is there some kind of genetic factor leading to a sort of a predisposition of a strong sense of coherence? So there are no definite answers yet. Now, remember the small office in a small town in Israel that my father sat in and used this typewriter to type the first drafts of what would become the salutogenic model? Well, from this small office, it grew and spread, and today, these are red dots all over our planet showing where there are centers of research in salutogenesis. These are all red dots except for one green dot. Maybe you can find it. If not, I'll help you. The Institute for Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine, established recently, which I already feel is becoming a strong center of thought and teaching of salutogenesis. So research is spread all over the world. Now, as you know, as scientists, theory is not enough. There are the theoretical concepts of salutogenesis and sense of coherence and resistance resources and other concepts, but theoretical concepts are not enough if we don't have a way to measure or to examine the model. So, question is, how is sense of coherence measured? Well, my father devised a 29-item questionnaire measuring sense of coherence and its 3 components. Later on, there was a short version, 13 items. Both versions have been found in tens of thousands of studies as valid and reliable. The questionnaire, as of last week, appears in 65 languages in more than 50 countries. There are also qualitative measures of the sense of coherence. I will not go into it here. Those of you who are interested in qualitative research may find a chapter of mine with 2 of my colleagues in the recently published Handbook of Salutogenesis, which is freely available on the STARS website. Excuse me? Yeah, okay, I'll go on.
Yeah.
Sample items from the questionnaire. Do you have the feeling that you're in an unfamiliar situation and don't know what to do? This is a question of comprehensibility, of understanding. A second example, how often do you have feelings that you're not sure you can keep under control? This is a question of manageability. And do you have the feeling that you don't really care about what goes on around you? This is meaningfulness. Okay. These are items from the questionnaire, and there are also other versions of the questionnaire developed for specific causes, like a children's sense of coherence for use with children more or less between the ages of 6 and 12. There's a sense of a family coherence. Instead of only viewing sense of coherence as an individual orientation to life, there's the question of how does a family as a whole view life, perceive its own life as a family. And from there, it grew on to a sense of community coherence and even sense of national coherence. And there are also measures of sense of coherence in specific contexts. For example, workplace sense of coherence. This is something that I assume Professor Georg Bauer, who will lecture in a few weeks, will talk about. And recent examples of research with sense of coherence, it was hard to choose just a few examples out of tens of thousands of studies. But for example, I began with mentioning the Holocaust survivors. So it was found that sense of coherence could predict physical health among Holocaust survivors better than the predictive value of the severity of camp experience. In other words, people rated how severe their concentration camp experience was, but that was not as good as a predictor of current health as the sense of coherence. There was a very interesting study done among parents of children with autism in Sudan, Qatar, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia a few years ago, in which sense of coherence was an important factor in predicting how well these parents would cope with the life with an autistic child. Recovery from heart attacks. Rehabilitation from heart attacks was faster and easier among people who had a strong sense of coherence compared to people with a weak sense of coherence. And finally, in the field of mental health, sense of coherence can help predict post-traumatic stress disorder among war veterans. Those with a stronger sense of coherence were less likely to develop post-traumatic stress disorder than those with a weak sense of coherence. Applications of the salutogenic model were at first in the health sciences, physical or mental health, but not only, as you will see. There are several physical and mental health interventions aimed at increasing or strengthening the sense of coherence. Usually a one-time workshop, which is very popular, is not enough. It may change sense of coherence temporarily, maybe there may be a measurement error in increased sense of coherence marks, but usually it takes more than a one-time or two-time short workshop. It takes longer. It's good to do with teenagers and people in their early 20s before their sense of coherence is stabilized, but it's possible. As I said, it started out in the health arena, but it spread out to further areas like planning of educational systems, workplaces, and urban environments with regard to health promoting factors in those contexts. And I showed you a map of our planet before and said that that salutogenesis is spread all over the continents, but not only. It turns out that salutogenesis found its way to space as well, because the salutogenic model was used a couple of years ago for the architectural planning of the living quarters and the common areas in the Space Station Gateway. That's a space station which will host astronauts on their way to the moon as part of NASA's Artemis program. So salutogenesis is in space. I hope it won't get lost in space. And in recent months, I came to learn about salutogenesis in yoga and music therapy. Now, this is something I know about, but you know much more than me, so I don't have to describe how salutogenesis is relevant to yoga and music therapy, you are thinking and doing yoga and music therapy, and I'm sure you're using salutogenic principles. So, if I just want a word of caution, I am not saying that salutogenesis should replace pathogenesis. They, as I said, they are not two different sides of the same coin. They can coexist. If you have a bad headache, take an aspirin. Don't go looking for the meaning in life. Just take an aspirin. If you cut your finger and it's bleeding, don't look for social support. Put a Band-Aid on it. But when you're looking at life in general, don't ask only, why do I sometimes get sick or feel troubled? Instead, ask, what helps me understand what's going on? What coping tools or resources do I have? What gives me motivation? What meaning can I find in what happens to me? In other words, ask the salutogenic question. How does one learn to swim well in the river of life? Thank you very much, and namaste. And if there are any questions, I would, I think, yes, there's, well, you can find the my email, and there was a slide that didn't work for some reason, but the address of the website, of the STARS website, and my email address, you know how to find that through Professor Anandaji. So thank you very much. And if there are questions, I'll be glad to relate and answer or hear from you.
Dr. Avishai, you know, I must say this has been an admirable presentation. And in fact, you know, it's something that has really opened up a huge perspective of salutogenesis. We strengthened some things we thought we knew, but we realized we didn't know enough. And that is how we grow. And your way of presenting, you are a master presenter. You are a master.
Thank you.
I would like to request our registrar, Professor Srinivasan sir, to say a few words, because it was just such a masterful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a wonderful presentation, fabulous presentation all the way. And this can come, my humble suggestion and humble feeling is that we have got lots to learn in emulating you, how well you can present even the wide gamut of such a complex and very comprehensive subject. You can give that actually that minuscule presentation, which is so concise, so succinct, which has allowed us to breathe salutogenesis. I think this is a really thing. I hope we will not be struggling to swim in the river of life, sir. I think after listening to Dr. Avishai, I'm quite sure that all of us would emphatically agree with me that you have really opened new vistas. That is not exaggeration. It is not flattery. It is just coming from my heart. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I really appreciate what Srinivasan has said there. We are in the river of life, and we will learn to swim efficiently and also help others to swim efficiently. So we also shouldn't drown, and we have to remember there are others who also need our support. A beautiful presentation. Before others ask any question, I just wanted to ask a question. How long do you think an intervention should be for a change in the sense of coherence to manifest? You said like 1 day or 2 day workshops are not enough. Is there any specific time frame?
I don't think there's a specific time frame. I think it needs a few stages, because a 1 day or 2 day intervention will probably, if I share the components of sense of coherence, it will probably give the cognitive component. People will learn about it and about what is important. So they will know cognitively, but they will not feel it yet. They will not. It is not enough to really develop an orientation towards life, viewing things and thinking about resources and feeling strengthening meaning. I think I'm not sure it's so much a matter of time, but I know that interventions that I was part of took somewhere between 3 and 4 months, not daily, but coming back and practicing things, and also linking it to different concepts under the same salutogenic umbrella, such as resilience and self-efficacy and others. It's the whole. What is needed is a shift in thought patterns, which will lead to realizing what resources I have. Because if a young person thinks, I have this and that challenge to cope with, and life is bad, so life will be bad, and mind creates reality, and that takes time. So I don't know if I can't set a specific time frame, but it's a matter of weeks or a few months with follow-up measures, and it's important to measure strength of sense of coherence at the beginning and at the end, and following a few months later to see how it stays, and not being a temporary elevation in sense of coherence scores, which happens quite often after any kind of intervention.
I really appreciate that, Avishai, because we are currently applying a few of these as a pilot with our medical students, dental students, nursing students. And the question came up in a faculty discussion yesterday that it would be ideal. So I thought, you are the best person to guide us. And we are looking at checking out the sense of coherence in Indian students, because I believe there are studies in Japanese and German. So we thought it would be interesting to see the sense of coherence of Indian students. So we are looking towards taking it forward, and we will be pestering you a bit for some advice on that for sure as it comes. I would like to request Shobana ma'am to unmute, and Dr. Shobana is in charge of music therapy.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. So thanks a lot for the eye-opener and full presentation, Dr. Avishai.
Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I can't hear you very well, but you're audible, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I have a query with respect to the question and parents, because we have many areas where we work. One is the students, patients, the faculties, and that. So is there any thing different to approach these three groups? For example, the students, patients, and professionals, in terms of giving our intervention or in terms of getting the answers for the sense of coherence questionnaire. Can you give us some idea about that?
Yes, I hope I heard you well, because it was sort of, the connection wasn't very good, but I understand that you're asking about students, faculty, professionals, and groups, and how to approach them with interventions or measurement of sense of coherence. There's no inherent different. I mean, as long as everyone, all human beings can be treated the same way, but the only thing is the matter of age. Students are younger than faculty members, and as I said, the sense of coherence is thought to be more or less stabilized by about age 30. Now, my father believed that this was, at age 30, a person who is has a job, perhaps has a family and completed his studies for those who go to academic studies. So at the age of 30, a person is more or less stabilized, and such is his sense of coherence, unless there are some very important major life events, positive or negative, later on. Today, it is believed that it is not, the age 30 is not a very strict limit. So I will not, I won't say after age 30 there's nothing to do. What I am saying is that the younger a person is, the easier it is to shape his or her sense of coherence, and therefore interventions may be more constructive or helpful. People who are, at my age, I'm hopeless. So, but with older people, there's more work to do, I think. Like in other things, it's not only sense of coherence, which is easier to intervene with at a younger age. They're, as we educate our children, when they're 30, they're still our children, but it's harder to educate them. So I would just consider age, but not different status like faculty or students, etc.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
A lot, and this perspective is little different for us. Thank you.
I was just thinking that, in the past, we used to have the idea that if you lose a part of your nervous system, you cannot get it back. There was that concept. Today, we understand neuroplasticity. So I think similarly, 30 years ago, the perspective of, what we could change may have been different than what we can change today. So they used to say you cannot teach an old dog new tricks.
Right, but you can.
But we can. We find that we can. And it's a bit tougher, as you said, that I loved that example you brought of working with your grandson. I think that was really a very good way to bring out the concept. I would like to request Dr. Rama Reddy to say a few words. He is one of our PhD scholars, but more than that is one of India's top psychiatrists and a person who's received the topmost medical honor, VC Roy Awardee. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Namaste. Really very fortunate to have Professor Antonovsky's lecture here. Actually, I'm here since 1970. I'm in the field of medicine as a student, as a professor, as a practitioner. First time I heard the word salutogenesis from my Acharya Bhavananiji 3 years ago. Then I secretly looked into Google what the meaning of the salutogenesis is when he was using. So that was the scenario for me. And the 3 years I have grown up to the level of being a scholar at ISCM. But I have been from bottom to top approach. I have been looking at the things from psychiatric perspective. And later I started looking at the things from yoga therapy point of view. And only from the health point of view. Okay, the holistic approach is the holistic health I was thinking. Now I understand that not only the bottom to top approach, but top to bottom approach, like the bigger system, including the educational systems, political systems, business systems, so many things can get incorporated into this one. Certain words like coherence, we use frequently, but really understanding the meaning of it, living to the meaning of it is a somewhat not so easy thing. I think you have opened up my eyes so that I think I can get more knowledge about this one. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to just to relate to what you said about bottom to top and top to bottom, and educational systems and healthcare systems and political systems. These are areas that I am not an expert in with regard to salutogenesis, but I know that the people who will talk in following webinars, like Professor Bengt Lindström and Georg Bauer and Margaret, they know more about the use of the or applying salutogenesis into greater systems. I hope they will relate to that too.
Thank you so much. We would like to conclude by requesting Dr. Ingan from Norway to say a few words. She is again part of the extended family and will also be giving a talk on positive psychology and salutogenesis, being a professor of psychology in Norway.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Antonovsky, for a very beautiful and enlightening talk. I became very curious about one thing, because you mentioned an example, one of the early works of your father, where he found that 29% of the women who were concentration camp survivors, surprisingly, they were flourishing. So I can imagine that your father must have been very interesting to understand this group. And what resources, what sense of coherence did they have? Could you say something about that?
Yes. What I think, without going too deeply into the details of that study, but I think the most important thing for them over the years, although it's difficult, it's not right to point at one specific factor, but I think a main factor was social support, which is the other side of loneliness. I think I see there are still few Holocaust survivors living in Israel today, and I think what makes the difference for them is how the issue of loneliness versus social support. In terms of physical and mental health, I think the number one cause of difficulty is the feeling of being alone or being abandoned. So social support, whether it's a family that whether getting married and having children or having close friends with you, that is the most important factor in their strength of sense of coherence.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense, because if one looks into this new research field of happiness, that is also one of the findings, that what is most important to people in their life is other people. So if you have good support, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Avishai, for that very enlightening presentation, and also for taking our questions and taking it forward, because as you know, we are all hungry for more understanding of salutogenesis. For us, we realize we are still in the kindergarten stage, and that there's a lot to learn, and we are looking forward to learning a lot from you and all the eminent speakers who are blessing us with their wisdom. So officially, I would like to place on record our gratitude to Dr. Avishai for being with us today.
Thank you.
And for supporting the work that we are doing at ISCM. To see that green mark of ISCM on that world map brought tears to my eyes. Thank you for your confidence in us and your support. We hope to be worthy of it in the years to come.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, all of you, for honoring me. It was very good to be here, and this will have a continuation, I'm sure. I need to apologize that in a few minutes I will have to leave this session. I'm glad it's recorded, so I will see the recording later on, and we will meet online again at a later time. Thank you very, very much.
We also hope you will visit us in Pondicherry in the near future.
Amen. Thank you.
We are now going to be going on to the second part. We'll just take a 5-minute break so that if you need to move around a bit, in 5 minutes, we'll come back. The meeting will be continued in the same link. So if you want to put your videos off and go for a short moment break, you're most welcome.
Wish I left.
Sir, welcome, sir.
Dr. Avishai, namaste and thank you so much. This is Dr. Meena from ISCM. So just at all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just loved and enjoyed your presentation. It's just too
Thank you. I am honored.
You know,
Thank you.
especially what you said, because this is away from this I'm just discussing.
Mhm.
The way you prepared your grandson. That's something amazing, right? Because instead of
Yes.
just doing the work for him, what you did is to prepare him to do the work himself.
Yes,
That's what teacher is all about. And
Thank
I
you.
would say yoga therapy is kind of synonymous to it because yoga therapy tries to empower the individual.
Mhm. That's empowerment. Yes.
There's a beautiful relativity that I couldn't help but share it with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Welcome back, everyone. So we will begin now the second part of the session, and I give over to Dr. Meena for introducing this session because it is my session. So we are going on to the second session of the first day.
So, namaste, everybody. I'm still at awe, you know, like after listening to Dr. Avishai's wonderful presentation, and it gives me immense pleasure to actually say a few words. Guru, Dr. Anandabal Yogi Bhavanani sir, who's the director and professor ISCM at Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth, Pondicherry. He is the son and successor of Yoga Maharishi Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri and Ammaji Yogacharini Meenakshi Devi Bhavnani. He has 19 DVDs, 50 books and compilations, and 13 copyrights and more than 300 publications to his credit. More than that, it is the number of citations that matter. So more than 3,210 citations, which an index of 28 and an I-10 index of 68. He's a classical Indian vocalist, a percussionist, a composer and a choreographer, a consultant yoga expert for WHO, the World Health Organization, honorary advisor of International Association of Yoga Therapists USA, the World Yoga Foundation, the Australian Association of Yoga Therapists. And he is a member of the steering committee of Yoga Certification Board, National Board for Promotion and Development of Yoga and Naturopathy, Standing Finance Committee, CCRYN, and Steering Committee, Yoga Certification Board, International Yoga Day and National DM Program for the Ministry of Ayush and Government of India. So over to Ananda sir for the next speech. Sir?
Yes, thank you so much, Meena, for that kind introduction. We are going to be going into my presentation, which will be in two parts. The first part of the presentation deals with the concept of swasthya and its relationship to salutogenesis. Second part of my presentation will be based on the salutogenic focus at SBV itself. So we'll start to share the screen. Tadparam paryaya vidmahe jnanalingeshwaraya dhimahi tanno bhuva prachodayate. Om Yoga Maharishi Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri Guru Maharaj ki Jai. Om Puduvai Kalaimamani Puduvai Shakti Yogacharini Ammaji Meenakshi Devi Bhavanani Guru Mata ki Jai. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. So it is a pleasure to address you all in this international webinar series on salutogenesis and holistic health. My topic for today is Swasthya and Adi Vyadhi, the psychosomatics in Indian healing traditions. The World Health Organization, as we know, defines health as a state, a dynamic state of complete physical, mental, social and spiritual well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. This is very much resonating with a very beautiful concept from Plato, that the treatment of the part shouldn't be attempted without a treatment of the entirety. Treating the body without treating the mind and soul is a useless waste of time. So when we come back to this definition, we realize we need a holistic perspective of health, not limited to only the physical or only the mental, only the spiritual or only the social. All dimensions have to come together. This is where in the traditional Ashtanga Yoga system of Maharishi Patanjali, we find a very beautiful concept of Ashtanga Yoga, 8 limbs of yoga, where we can say that the Yama Niyama, they are dealing with the social health. The morals and ethics deal with the social health. The practice of the asana pranayama helping determine a positive, promotive state of physical health. working with the withdrawal from the senses and one-pointedness of the mind into a state of mental health dimension, and the meditative state of deep contemplation, dhyana, and absorption, samadhi, becoming spiritual health. So we can see that the Indian tradition concept of health and multidimensionality fits very well with our modern concept also. There is a wonderful tradition, the healing tradition of India, going back thousands of years. And Acharya Shushruta, who is often described as the father of surgery, he describes a state of swast as samadosha sama agnischa samadhatu malakriya prasanna atma indriya mana swast ityabhidiyate, where he says, and this is around 600 BC, that health is a dynamic balance of the elements, the humors, the normal metabolic activity, efficient elimination, and more than all of this, it has a tranquil mind, senses, and a contented soul. This, to me, is what the dynamic state of wellness, wholesome health is. And we find that balanced equilibrium, we find dynamic elimination and tranquil contentment as the epitome of what holistic health can be. When we talk about health, we can understand a 4-quadrant model also, where at the lowest level, the subhuman old tendencies, primitive tendencies are there, and we are moving out of that into the upper quadrant, which is towards divinity. The lower left quadrant having the dimension where sickness, the region where ill health and sickness is manifesting, where we need pathogenesis, and coming up into the region of normal health, where that salutogenic focus helping us arise from the depth of that quadrant 3, come up into that first quadrant and move forward into the highest possible attainment of all-round health and wellness. The yogic concept of the Pancha Kosha, the 5 aspects of our existence, describes the Annamaya as the physical existence, Pranamaya as our energy existence, Manomaya as our mental conscious existence, Vijnanamaya as the intellectual existence, and Anandamaya as the cosmic universal existence. This can be brought right down to our cellular level, where we can have a concept of the cellular Panchakosha, where every cell in the body has a structural existence, the Annamaya. Every cell has a functional mechanism, which is its Pranamaya. It has its cellular memory, the Manomaya. Intelligent biofeedback mechanisms of the cell, the Vijnanamaya, and a systemic interactivity with every other cell in the body, which is its Anandamaya. So these concepts are right down into our cellular, subcellular level, and also at the universal level. Our dear Dr. Satbir Khalsa, one of the most eminent yoga researchers at Harvard, has described how the yoga practices that include postures, breathing, relaxation, and meditation, they can work on 4 domains. The fitness domain, which enhances the flexibility, strength, coordination, respiratory function, and self-efficacy. The self-regulation domain, where you are enhancing emotional regulation, stress regulation, resilience, equanimity, and self-efficacy. The awareness domain, where attention, mindfulness, concentration, cognition, and metacognition are enhanced. And the spirituality domain, where a development of transcendence, unitive state, the beautiful concept of flow, transformation, and life meaning and purpose. You can see that these domains are very, very similar to what is being brought out through the concept of the theory of salutogenesis, which ultimately we must remember, though they are understood separately, all come together to enhance the global human functionality at all levels of our existence. In the scripture called Yoga Vashishta, About 5,000 years ago, they have talked about Adi Vyadi, the concept of psychosomatics, which is so important because what happens with the mind influences the body, and what influences the body influences the mind. And despite that, something else is also there. And that is why this concept of how through the koshas, this imbalance causes disease. So if the imbalance causes disease, pathogenesis, how can you balance all of this? How can you work at the level of the Manomaya Kosha? Well, that is where we have all those practices that are training the human mind. We have practices that work at the Pranamaya Kosha through the pranayamas, and at the Annamaya Kosha, so many of the practices, the loosening practices, the energizing techniques of the Shitalikarana Vyayama, the Sukshma Vyayama, the Pavana Mukta series of Swami Satyananda at the Bihar school, our own jatis, and of course, the work with the asana. Because the goal of asana is not just to look good for a photograph on Instagram, but the purpose of asana is to create a beautiful state within ourselves, a state of ease, a dynamic, steady state of ease called sukha. And that is why steadiness, sthirata, and ease, sukhata, sthira sukham asanam, as Maharishi Patanjali tells us. So just as the disease is caused from the Adi to the Vyadi, we can say that the mechanisms of the Indian healing systems, yoga and other healing traditions, they are working at a multi-kosha level, multi-dimensional level, trying to influence the physical body, influence the breath, influence the mind, ultimately to produce a sense of swasth, which is the dynamic sense of wellness. Again, we realize that in the Adi Vyadi concept of psychosomatics, that there is the psychic phase of all disorders, where you are not at ease with yourself. This can be linked to the Vijnanamaya Manomaya. There is a psychosomatic where it comes into the Manomaya, the somatic where it comes into the Pranamaya Annamaya, and organic when it comes into the Annamaya alone. So we can see how disease doesn't occur just today. It is a continuous process. And if disease, this is, as Avishai so beautifully put it, if this is resulting from the Adi Vyadi, ease or health and wellness can also result from it. Working with the body to influence the mind and working with the mind to influence the body. So the same psychic, psychosomatic, somatic and organic phases of disease progression, Adi Vyadi, can also be of health promotion through that same Adi Vyadi mechanism. The pathway is the same. The telephone line is the same, whether you are going to say loving words or going to say hateful, spiteful words, the line is the same. How do you utilize that line is what determines the effect. The Adi Vyadi is the same. Will you use it for pathogenesis or will you use it for salutogenesis? That is where the power of choice comes in. And this is why Antonovsky himself has so beautifully described this concept. And Bengt Lindström and Monica Eriksson, along with Peter Wikingston, have so beautifully brought this out that there is the stressor. The stressor comes in into the Adi Vyadi. And depending on how you perceive it, so how you perceive that stressor implies whether you will go towards the salutogenic promotion of health, H+, or the pathogenic deterioration of health, H-, which leads to breakdown. How do we perceive the stressor? How do we? Is it comprehensible? Is it understandable? Is it manageable? Is it purposeful? And the moment we can realize it, the attitude we choose, as our beloved Ammaji would say, beatitude is the attitude you choose towards your own being. In yoga, we call it Pratipaksha Bhavanam, the contrary attitude. That you understand that every challenge is an opportunity for growth. And the moment you realize it's an opportunity for growth, it takes on the salutogenic perspective rather than the pathogenic. Of course, when we understand the Indian systems, especially yoga, we understand that it is not just something you do once. It is something that has to be done again and again. It is a lifestyle. How do you exercise? What is your physical activity scale? What is your mental activity? What are your dietary components? What type of recreation do you choose? And what type of relationships? In one of the questions, we saw that Dr. Avishai pointed out the importance of social support. And this is why the yoga of relationship is so important. When we offer yoga therapy here at ISCM, it is often offered in a group scenario so that you can create a group support for the person to move from ill health into a state of wellness. So it is individual, personalized, but often in a group setting to enhance the relationship building. And this is why when we perceive the Adi Vyadi and we want to understand where we are, Swami Geetananda Giri has given a 12-point system of diagnosis and health evaluation that looks at the 3 basic qualities, the gunas, the 3 humors, the doshas, the 3 vasanas, the psychological background, the prana vayus, the energy flows, the abhyasa, the personal discipline, the jiva karma, the lifestyle, the chetana, the quality of thoughts, vacha, the quality of speech, ahara, the dietary habits, viparita buddhi, the destructive habits that are demeaning us, and the individual body weights measured through the jiva vrittis. And we must never forget the ideals of the individual. What is the purpose of your life? What is the dharma, the swadharma, the ikigai of your own life? And this is why Swami Geetananda Giri has so beautifully brought out the concept. Health and happiness are your birthright. Do not forsake your golden culture for the plastic playthings of the modern world. Learn and live yoga, for then you will know true health and happiness. A beautiful concept that he so wonderfully brought out, that we are responsible for our own health and happiness. Today, we are outsourcing health and happiness. The moment you outsource it, you lose control. The moment you lose control, you lose the sense of coherence. This is why, to come back to that sense of coherence, to come back to the salutogenic paradigm, we need to understand the influence of the mind on the body and the body on the mind, creating that wholesome sense of swasthya or wellness at all levels, where there is a equilibrium of all the factors that need to be balanced. There is a dynamic elimination of the waste metabolites so that you are not poisoning yourself. And more than anything, there is that beautiful, tranquil mind, spirit, and you are at ease with your own self. This is what we want to promote. And through the ISCM, we have been promoting that. The second part of today's talk looks at salutogenesis as the core focus at SBB. And as we have seen, we want to move from the paradigm of pathogenesis to salutogenesis. But again, as Avishai so beautifully put it, they are not two sides that are disparate. They can be understood as a continuum. And so while we also help people with the sickness, we want to enhance the sense of wellness in everyone who comes here. We must offer gratitude to K.R. Sethuraman sir, because during his stint as Vice Chancellor, he opened our minds and hearts to salutogenesis. And a beautiful quote from Sethuraman sir, becoming whole is what healing is all about. We want to facilitate healing in all the individuals, not just the cure. Whereas pathogenesis was looking at the disease, we want to look at health. We are not worried about just the problem. We want to reach the potential. We want to be proactive and manifest health for gain and growth and discover how to live fully. This is why at SBB we have realized illness and wellness are a continuum, where the treatment paradigm of pathogenesis looks at disability, signs and symptoms. However, the wellness paradigm of salutogenesis goes all across the spectrum, right from the disability, signs and symptoms part also, but then moving beyond pathogenesis into awareness, education, and growth towards a high level of wellness. From the dukkha to the sukha, from the concept of disease, roga to aroga. And that is the growth curve we are looking at. We want to change the paradigm from what did I do today to treat disease or illness to what did I do today to create health and wellness. This is the type of paradigm shift that we are working on here at SBV through the ISCM. For this, we need to bridge a gap. So bridging the gap is a very essential component of this whole process. And especially in mind-body therapies, we can see that the East-West dichotomy is being overcome. And we have to realize health is all about integration. And for that integration to occur, what do we need? We need communication. Communication is essential for integration. Now, when we want to communicate here at ISCM, over the past decade plus in the schools of yoga therapy and music therapy, we have communicated with our clinicians in the hospital setup by looking at the unsolved clinical needs. Can we reduce crying spells in children? Can we reduce the parental anxiety during immunization? Can we reduce the antenatal, postnatal complications? Can we reduce the pre-op anxiety in patients posted for angioplasty? Can we enhance the clinical outcomes in non-communicable diseases? Can we enhance the healing in neurological illnesses? Enhancing the quality of life in terminal illnesses? And can we enhance the compliance to medical management? Well, we have found that the answer is yes. Of course, the next question is how? The answer is integrative medicine. Because integrative medicine is based on creating a healthcare system that enhances the qualitative and quantitative. It is both the qualitative and the quantitative are being enhanced. We must accept with humility that no healthcare system is totally perfect, at least as of yet. Strengths of one system balance out the weakness of the other. And by bringing in these Indian systems, traditional systems of healing, a humanistic model of patient care can be promoted. We can create an optimal healing environment, an environment which is salutogenic, helping the healing mechanisms, the healing response. We all know the stress response. Some of us know the relaxation response. But more than that, the healing response. Can we bring about a response that is of healing, rejuvenation, restoration, recuperation? And this all is manifesting salutogenesis. When we look at the history of CAM, what we find is that initially it was an alternative system. Alternate, the word means there is a conflict, there is a competition. It is either you or me. But then we moved from alternative systems of medicine to complementary medicine, where we are complementing each other, we are helping each other. And most of our studies here have been on the adjuvant effect of yoga therapy, music therapy in so many conditions over the past decade plus. But now we are moving forward into integrative medicine. And this is where the WHO is promoting traditional, complementary, and integrative medicine, which is where ISCM stands in the forefront of manifesting this as a reality. When we talk about healing, we need to understand it's multifactorial. It is determined by the lifestyle, the attitude, relaxation, and breathing, all of them facilitating healing. And I'm so happy Avishai mentioned, the biomechanical model that medicine started off with. Today we have the psycho-socio-spiritual model of wellness, where biologically we are looking at the human being and how all these systems of integration can help. We are looking at the social, the psychological, and all of this is coming together in the spiritual, you can see how at all levels, there is much more evidence coming up of the potentialities of yoga and other systems of healing in helping us enhance the wellness at the biological, the psychological, the sociological, and the spiritual dimensions of health. All of this boils down to a change of perspective. As long as we are caught up in the me, we will be mean. Where as long as we are caught up in the I, illness manifests. But we are moving from the me to the we, from the I to the we, where illness moves into wellness and the me moves into the we. And this is where expanding our consciousness as we grow in spirit. For this, relaxation is the key to healing. Because if we are stressed, we cannot heal, which is why we need to facilitate the relaxation response. Yoga therapy and music therapy are enhancing the relaxation response, and by enhancing the relaxation response, facilitating a healing response. To my perspective, Indian medical system's greatest contribution to modern healthcare, as I can see it, is in the field of relaxation, non-pharmacological, cost-effective, self-directed relaxation may be the greatest contribution. Which is why the government of India now has the Ministry of Ayush, where the systems of medicine such as Ayurveda, Yoga and Naturopathy, Unani, Siddha and Saura Rigva, and homeopathy have come together as one. So how are we doing this at SBV? The yoga and music therapy services are provided as adjuvant. Remember, we want to work as complementary and integrative medicine, not alternative. We are working in the bedside, the operation theaters. We are working at the pre and post-op ICUs, the OPDs and master health checkups. We make sure that every individual who comes to us seeking care, every care seeker is treated with respect, dignity, and provided autonomy of choice, the humanistic aspect of medicine. Therefore, therapies are targeted but focused on individual needs. They are not disease specific, but they are individual targeted. So who is the individual who has the disease, and what are their aspirations, their needs, and how can you help them grow into health? And there are general salutogenic sessions for the faculty, staff, and students of SBV, all communicating wellness. We can see that yoga is usually found in physical education and sports departments, and music in the fine arts departments of many universities. But since 2010, CITER and CIMTER, the Centers for Yoga Therapy and Music Therapy, have offered yoga therapy and music therapy in a medical institution, educating the future yoga and music therapists, helping patients recover from their illnesses, and scientifically researching the hows and whys of these therapies. On the 22nd of August last year, these were upgraded into the ISCM, Institute of Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine. We can see the moments, memorable moments from the inauguration by Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan, chairman of the EC of the NAC and the former vice chairman of UGC. We also had visits by our own chancellor and the vice chancellor of Sri Ramachandra. Our own father of salutogenesis for SBV is Seduraman sir. His visit with Professor Anantakrishnan sir, who is our inspiring mentor, dean of faculty. We can see that in the realm of interdisciplinary clinical services, we are bridging the gap between traditional systems and modern medicine through collaborations. More than 55,000 participants have benefited in small group, targeted and personalized care. Daily OPD consultations, master health checkups, IP wards and pre and post-op care, and about 60,000 participants in family and local community through the general sessions for health and wellness that even are now being offered in our rural health center. We have targeted the orthopedics, general medicine, dermatology, psychiatry, pulmonology, you name the department, well, we have collaborated with them. Along with this, we are working towards competency-based education in yoga therapy and music therapy. that have interdisciplinary aspects. CBCS courses from PG certificates right up to the PhD, internship opportunities for international and Indian candidates, and bringing the yoga therapy into the curricular, extracurricular activity as yoga abhyasa for all the students of the university, be them medical, nursing, dental, pharmacy, physiotherapy, allied health, they all get the yoga abhyasa and the orientation programs. And through the music therapy, the MEETS program, which has really helped them to musically express emotions and thoughts. If you look at the research output, well, 48 completed and 15 ongoing interdisciplinary studies, and about 170 plus papers that have been published. And what have we found out of all of this? What is the one-line summary? Adjuvant yoga therapy, that is adding yoga therapy to conventional treatment, it halts the disease progression that is not happening when you only do one of the therapies. So the blessing here is that when you add the adjuvant, you are not a competitor, but you are a collaborator. Moving from being a competitor to being a collaborator and enhancing the health of the care seeker, enhancing the healing. With the music therapy, to try and regulate and maintain the optimum health and well-being at the physical, psychological, cognitive, and social functioning of the care seekers. We will find that a lot of community outreach, because we believe in community work, because that is how we give back to our society. Regular programs and so many social organizations, the IHRC events, which have been great successes, NADAM, which is an environmental health initiative through music therapy, Garbha Sanskar, healthy pregnancy and healthy baby program, interactive workshops with Government of Pondicherry in the Yoga Festival, International Day of Yoga celebrations, the IDY mass demos, a drum circle for burnout amongst the doctors, relaxation training for staff, and stress management programs for the nurses, flash mobs for MBBS students. And in the community, community singing and rural flash mobs have been quite popular. At the level of innovation and best practices, we have contributed to 23 copyrights. And I would like to highlight the SBV policy on salutogenesis, one of the first universities to actually have a university policy. And recently a copyright on a best practice, a university best practice, promoting wellness through salutogenesis. You can see that the ISCM is the brainchild of our benevolent management and administrators who have taken a policy decision to promote wellness through this university, utilizing yoga therapy and music therapy. We have looked at yoga and health professions education, choice-based credit courses, the musically express your emotions and thoughts for success, silver yoga for senior citizens, Divyanga yoga for the gender transition areas, salutogenic for the third gender, the gender trans dysmorphia, Divyanga for the children with special needs. I correct myself there, which has been one of our major works. We're working with children with autism, other special needs, enhancing the capacities. And again, an enculturated approach to music therapy. You can see some beautiful moments where the yoga therapy training coming into the classroom for our medical students, the students coming together in the celebration of the Yuv Yoga Sangamam National Youth Day, which is Swami Vivekananda's birthday. We, of course, the magnificent yoga event at the Pondicherry beach for the community with our Lieutenant Governor joining in. The yoga therapy during COVID times, our yoga therapists and instructors, Dhanush Apnadesh and Charulata, were COVID warriors, going into the COVID ward and offering the yoga therapy to enhance the wellness in patients admitted there, work with the special children, and members of all religious communities, going into the neurological rehab and working with the patients right in the hospital setting. Similarly, in the community, in the schools, and in the help age, which works with the elderly. And similarly, the music therapy, you can see taken into different aspects of the community so that we reach each and every one. The goal is to reach everyone who's seeking care. And programs for the students, you can see the drum circle where they are all sitting around and banging away at the drums, an amazing way to get rid of stress and burnout. And right into the intensive care, the pre and post-op situations where our therapists, the Mahatma Gandhi Medical College Hospital here is one of the few hospitals where all the yoga therapy trainees and the therapists can go in without any barriers. The music therapist can go into the operation theater, and while the operation is going on, in the labor room, while the delivery is going on, music therapy can be provided in the hospital setting itself. This is unique because usually there are a lot of barriers in medical institutions for non-medical people to move. Yet here, our music therapy personnel, the yoga therapy personnel can move freely. Taking it to the community through the International Health Research Convention events. And I would like to share this special moment where we had the inauguration of the plaque in honor of the father of salutogenesis. You can see our institute board and the beautiful plaque of Antonovsky at the top there. And you all met Dr. Avishai today. Well, he was there for the inauguration, which was a very special occasion, 19th of December last year. There have been global recognitions for this work through the Ayush, the Indian Yoga Association, the International Association of Yoga Therapists, Healthcare Skill Council, the World Federation of Music Therapy, and our own Dada Dilip Sarkar, who is the past president of American Heart Association and International Association of Yoga Therapists, recognizing the work here as 21st century medicine. Tie-ups with international organizations like the IMC CREMS in Austria. We are currently working on a MOU signing with NTNU in Norway, the Cambridge collaboration with Kaivalyadama, one of India's oldest yoga centers, Amity University and Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya. But despite all of this, it's always good to talk about success, but it's also important to talk about challenges. And this is where the challenges, the newness of the concept of integration definitely hits resistance everywhere. Because inertia is part and parcel of not just non-living things, but of living things also, especially human beings. A lot of initial resistance from the healthcare professionals and a lack of human resources and funding initially. A deficient understanding of the need, the pathways and modalities for interdisciplinary research, hands-on training and integrated patient care, lack of innovative training programs, and difficulty to find curricular space. These have been big challenges. But then how did we overcome them? Well, you need human bridges, people who understand both the traditional and the modern systems. And this has helped us a lot. The management and administration providing the infrastructure. We have a full-fledged institute today, thanks to their support, human resources and funding, guidance from advisory boards, international eminent personalities in the field of yoga therapy, music therapy, and we are currently making up a list, such as Dr. Avishai and others who we are going to be inviting to join a special advisory board for salutogenesis also, to attain, maintain, and sustain quality. Regular awareness programs for professionals, orientation programs for students of all the streams in the university through meets, Nadam, and Yoga Abhyasa. We have created innovative courses in yoga therapy, music therapy, including an elective course in salutogenesis, so that we can create competent therapists. And these electives and co-curricular activity for students, they are helping us break through these obstacles and move forward with confidence. I would like to end this presentation by introducing the wonderful ISCM team we have. In this image, you see me in the center. To my right, Dr. Meena, the head of yoga therapy. To the left, Dr. Shobana, the head of music therapy. On my total right, you find Bhuvaneshwari, assistant professor, music therapy. Next to Dr. Meena, you find Dayanidhi, assistant professor, yoga therapy. And right behind me, both my right and left shoulders are always covered by Dayanidhi and Balaji. Dr. Balaji, who's with us as assistant professor, yoga therapy. Janita is there next to Dr. Shobana, and she is assistant professor of music therapy. Behind here, Dhanush Apnadesh. You remember the COVID warrior, yoga therapist. We have Raghav, yoga therapist at the off-campus Satya Sai, where he is giving yoga therapy for all the people there. And on this end, we have Charulata, another COVID warrior, who is a yoga instructor therapist, who also was a COVID warrior during the COVID times, going into the wards and taking yoga to each and every person. It is a moment of great honor that we have such a team, thanks to our management. And I would like to express my gratitude to the whole team at ISCM, Schools of Yoga Therapy, Music Therapy, for enabling what you have heard me talk about today. I couldn't do it, I'm just the director, but the whole team work together, everyone achieves more. TEAM is so true of ISCM. I would like to express our gratitude to our Chancellor, our Vice Chancellor, Dean of Faculty, our Registrar, and all the administrators and faculty at SBB for supporting ISCM. I end my presentation at this point, and we can open up for about 15 minutes of question answers or any comments that you would like to make. Thank you so much. Dhanyavad. Dr. Meena, over to you.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving the beautiful insight as to how we are bringing the concept of salutogenesis and not just keeping it as a concept, but how practically we are implementing it in our everyday services, into the hospitals, into the wards and outreach programs. So through yoga therapy and through music therapy, it's such a beautiful opportunity that we have to bring these together. So thank you so much for putting this out. And, like, as you always keep giving the credit to the team, but still, having an efficient leader like you to lead all of us is what matters, sir. So thank you always for being there for all of us. Thank you, sir.
If it's okay, I would like to
Yes,
ask
please.
a question, because it seems to me that there is a lot of shared assumptions between salutogenesis and yoga therapy or yoga philosophy, and I assume also some shared assumptions with music therapy. And I can see that your institute benefits from taking a more salutogenetic perspective as opposed to a more pathogenetic perspective. But it seems to me that all the wisdom in yoga and yoga therapy could also contribute something to these centers of salutogenesis. So I think it could be a two-way interaction or cross-fertilization So I would like you to just express some thoughts of that.
It's a very pertinent point you have expressed, Dr. Ingan. For us here at ISCM, to have the term salutogenesis is very beneficial because it gives us a whiteboard on which to work. So salutogenesis gives us a framework within which to express the yoga therapy, the music therapy. And at the same time, as you said, I believe that the theory and practice of salutogenesis can benefit from the wisdom of yoga therapy, music therapy. Because we are talking of traditions that go back thousands of years. So I believe concepts like the Panchakosha, the 5 aspects of existence, the concept of swasth as wellness, which is why I have taken these topics, and Dr. Meena next week will talk about the Panchakosha, that we want to take these concepts and see if they can help the concept of salutogenesis to also be expanded in its own way. So I believe that it is a two-way street, which is why in this webinar, we have people who are having a background of salutogenesis. We have like yourself with a background in psychology. We have Dr. Meena and myself in yoga, Dr. Srinivasan and Dr. Shobana from the music therapy. We have all these angles we are bringing, and including Srinidhi Parthasarathi on the Bhagavad Gita. So what we are doing is we are trying to bring all these concepts onto one platform through this webinar series so that it can benefit both at our end and at the other end. So I believe that it is a living bridge. And in fact, the Stars Society, they have requested that when we put these videos online, they will link some of the videos to their website also, so that people who are working in salutogenesis can have another perspective through yoga therapy and music therapy, which is why I believe that ISCM, and it was a very special moment when Avishai showed that map with ISCM on it, because I believe that Indian cultural ethos can add a lot to the field of salutogenesis. So I think it can be bi-directional. Currently, we are trying to understand salutogenesis, but I was thinking today the concept of comprehensibility, manageability, and purposefulness can be linked to an Indian concept of the Icha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti, which are powers of the intellect that give us the capacity to change. So, and again, the attitude, Pratipaksha Bhavanam, the contrary attitude of yoga, again, along with, what has later on become CBT, how these come into this concept that the same person who is two people who are going through the same experience don't come out the same. And looking for the factors within the individual. So you are so perfectly right, Dr. Ingan. I believe that it is bi-directional. And I think this is a decade of salutogenesis as far as I am concerned for myself and ISCM.
Thank you.
Meena, if I can add, that was actually a really wonderful presentation, Professor Ananda. And I think it was a seamless flow following the talk actually by Dr. Avishai. And you touched upon these vital aspects of mind-body medicine, I think, especially the this one, and also the capacity to cope. That is very important. Coping, the art of coping, I think assumes or acquires great relevance in the realms of mind-body medicine, and more so in the realms of psychosomatic disorders. And especially you touched upon those vital aspects like Manomaya and Pranamaya. They are very good. And as you rightly told, the ethos coming from this part of the world, that is Indian subcontinent, will have plenty to offer, I think, in the realms of salutogenesis. And I, for one, actually have got a selfish motive also as a biochemist. Probably, I think we can also study the role of biogenic amines which play a huge role in psychosomatic disorders. Probably, I think we can take the cue from Dr. Avishai's inputs also and try to dwell upon some essential aspects of physiological and biochemical processes that govern psychosomatic disorders. And in the realms of yoga therapy and music therapy, maybe a little bit we can add to the ocean of knowledge. Thank you. Wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much, sir, for the kind words. And I hope that with your blessings, that one of the upcoming PhD topics at ISCM can take up this type of integrated approach, where we look at the psychological variables, the physiological and the physical, going right down into the molecular level, so that we are looking at the Panchakosha model as our research model also. Beautiful pointer, sir. Thank you, sir.
Rama Reddy, sir, would you like to give your perspective?
Namaste, madam. Sir, I have been listening to sir, and every time I listen to him, I get the newer perspectives about the subject, and I am always grateful to him. Recently, after starting ISCM, our neighbors, we are always in the urban style functioning. We do not know much about the neighbor. So similarly, the music therapy, just looking at the thing, what is happening there, I was not aware of much, but curious about it. After starting this ISCM, much more curious about the music therapy, the things happening there. I'm so fascinated about the things, and I'm very happy that the expansion of ISCM like a joint family from nuclear family too. Thank you, ma'am.
Shobana, ma'am?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, one second. So, thanks to Dr. Ananda sir for bringing a vast ocean into a nutshell. You had taken that each and every bit was of what was done in 1.5 decades was shown in your presentation. Thanks for that. And thanks, Dr. Rama Reddy. We are here to share what is happening here with everybody. And the same way, we from the music therapy also are fascinated and are very much into knowing what is happening as a whole. So let us all travel together hand in hand in the weeks and months to come, so that we learn from each other for the wellness of the, not only to the patients, to the entire community. So we look forward the interactions with you all in the weeks to come.
I support Ramareddy's statement, nuclear family becoming joint family. And to such an extent that in the current PhD scholar intake, we have a music therapy scholar being guided by Dr. Meena, that is our Janita, and we have a yoga therapy scholar being guided by Dr. Shobana.
Yes.
So it is very interesting that we have this cross-fertilization happening at ISCM. I just thought about it a few moments ago. That is very beautiful that, this type of integration is happening.
Yes, it happened on its by its own.
That's so true. It's a natural, it's an organic growth. I would say that this is an organic growth that is facilitated by many loving, compassionate, supporting souls.
Nice
because
to
it's
hear
not, it's something that has to happen. We are only the karta, we are only the nimitta, we are the tool. And there's a divine will for all of this to happen.
True, sir.
So before we close for today, I would like to remind everybody that this system of webinar, we have the weekly sessions every Thursday from 10:30 to 12:30. This week we started at 10 because we had the inauguration and we didn't want to take away from the time for the speeches. Hence, we had done it this way. So next week, we have the session which is again going to be a cross-fertilization session, as you can see, where we have a talk by Professor Dr. Shobana J. Ganesh, Administrative in Charge, School of Music Therapy, ISCM. She is also a Professor of Physiology and Deputy Director at Medical Simulation. And she is going to be talking about promoting salutogenic capacity in health professionals, salutogenesis in hospitals and primary care settings. While Professor Meena Ramanathan, the Vice Principal, School of Yoga Therapy, she is going to be expounding on Ashtanga Yoga of Maharishi Patanjali. The Panchakosha is a model of holistic wellness. Nara, which is the psychic disassociation. So do stay tuned with us for next week's webinar with two dynamic Shaktis. And I also wanted to end with a statement from Dr. Avishai, who said whenever his father had doubt, he would ask the mother. And I thought that was so sweet of him, that salutogenesis was coined by Aaron Antonovsky, but sense of coherence by his wife. And I love that. I love that feeling. And it was so apt because yesterday we celebrated International Women's Day. So wishing all the women a slightly belated Happy Women's Day. It's a time to start this webinar series. Thank you everyone for being with us. See you next week. We'll close with the closing prayer. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shantihi 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 Om. Thank you everyone, and hope to keep on seeing you every week as we go forward. Dhanyavad. Thank you. Nandri. Vanakkam.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.